Come see us on tour in Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, New York, Co-Host, New York, Providence, Rhode Island, Los Angeles, Bakersfield, San Jose, Toledo, Ohio, and Toronto, Ontario. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. The Trump administration, remember I showed you that video of them deporting all those people to El Salvador? Well, it turns out there's a big problem with that.
Because they're Venezuelan?
Because they're not from El Salvador. They're from Venezuela.
Yeah.
A lot of them are from Venezuela. Also, some of them are American citizens. Whoops. I'm going to cover that in a second. But that's why you're supposed to have due process, right? So here's Glenn Greenwald is here to tell you why this is messed up.
Now, it is true that President Trump campaigned on a promise to initiate a program of mass deportations against people who entered the United States illegally,
which I supported.
Yeah, there's a law. You have to have it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're going to cut into entitlements, remember?
Yeah, remember that? But here we go.
Across the border with no approval of the U.S. government, who have no visa, who have no green card, no legal right to be in the United States. And usually what deportation means is that you take the person who's in your country illegally and you just send them back to the country of origin, whatever country of which they're a citizen. And in that case, the stakes aren't that high. I mean, it is for some people who have been in the United States for a long time, but in general, the reason the public ratified that is because people believe that if you enter the United States illegally, the U.S. government has the right to take you and send you back to your country. You don't go back to prison, you just go back to your country. What the Trump administration is now doing is much, much different than the way deportation is carried out. Here from CNN on February 4th, 2025, El Salvador offers to house violent U.S. criminals and deportees of any nationality in an unprecedented deal. The president of El Salvador has become a kind of darling of the international populist right. There's a lot of admiration for the way in which he eliminated violent crime by just rounding up thousands and thousands and thousands of people and putting them into some of the most repressive prisons. Again, rounding them up without much due process. There's obviously a lot of people in those prisons who are violent gang members who deserve to be locked up, and there's people who don't deserve to be locked up, which is what happens when you put people in prison without due process. And these prisons are designed to keep people forever. They are about the worst place you could want to be anywhere in the world. There's a maximum security prison in El Salvador that has been built for gang members who they call terrorists. That's about the worst place you can want to be. But the El Salvadoran president has been currying favor with the Trump administration and said, if you need a place to send illegal immigrants when you're deporting them, we don't even care if they have anything to do with El Salvador, if they've ever been to El Salvador, if they're citizens of El Salvador, just send them back to us and we will put them into these very repressive prisons and just keep them there. And that's what the United States government under the Trump administration is now doing. Not deporting these people in the normal course of deportation. They're not going back to their country of origin. Even though in the case of, say, Venezuelans, the Venezuelan government has made very clear they will take back all their deported illegal immigrants. They've been taking them back. We're not sending El Salvadorans back to El Salvador. We're sending Venezuelans back to El Salvador or any other nationality that the U.S. government decides should be there. In other words, we're throwing them to a black hole for life without any charges against them, without any due process. We're knowingly imprisoning people for life with no due process. Here from the BBC, U.S. deports hundreds of Venezuelans despite court order. Quote, the case raises constitutional questions since under the U.S. system of checks and balances, government agencies are expected to comply with a federal judge's ruling. Venezuela criticized Trump, invoking the Alien Enemies Act, saying it, quote, unjustly criminalizes Venezuelan migration and, quote, evokes the darkest episodes in the history of humanity from slavery to the horrors of the Nazi concentration camp. Rights groups condemned Trump, accusing him of using a 227-year-old law to circumvent due process. Amnesty International USA wrote on X that the deportations are, quote, Yet another example of the Trump administration's racist targeting of Venezuelans based on sweeping claims of gang affiliation. President Bukele, the El Salvadoran president, a Trump ally, wrote that the detainees were immediately transferred to El Salvador's notorious mega jail, the Terrorism Confinement Center. The El Salvadoran president said they would be held there, quote, for a period of 1 year and that it could be renewable, which is what happens. They send them there for a year and then they basically automatically renew the imprisonment every year and basically nobody ever leaves. El Salvador's Seco jail is part of Bukele's efforts to crack down on the country's organized crime. The newly built maximum security facility, which can hold up to 40,000 people, has been accused by human rights groups of mistreating inmates.
So that's a big switch in our immigration policy. And guess what?
Why are they not sending him to Venezuela, who will take them, and it's where they're from? Again, I don't care about MS-13 people at all, but here's the problem. Once you create that they could do whatever, they don't stop with the MS-13
That's right.
people.
That's exactly
and then
right.
10, 15, maybe not even that long, years down the line, suddenly somebody protested and they're going to New Guantanamo. I mean, it's the same game every goddamn time.
A woman says her husband, Arturo Suarez Trejo, a musician, was arrested for being undocumented, but was one of the Venezuelans taken to El Salvador and accused of TDA gang members. She says the father of her baby has only ever sang and composed for a living. He just has tattoos.
Of what the? You don't have a look. Is it a real gang tattoo, or are they making up that it's a gang tattoo?
And there he is. So that's him.
What's the tattoo?
This is the guy. A 32-year-old father of 3-month-old baby was filming a music video in North Carolina when he was arrested by U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement during a raid that left many without explanation. ICE deported Jose Reyes Barrios, a Venezuelan soccer player who was tortured by Maduro's dictatorship. He applied for asylum in the United States. No evidence he committed any crime, no gang membership. The ICE sent him to a prison in El Salvador.
Is that who's at fault? The guy who does the policy, the working guy? It's really not ICE. It's really who made the policy, isn't it?
Venezuelan professional goalkeeper deported to El Salvador prison, stunning family back home. This guy.
Okay. Why not send him to El Salvador?
To Venezuela.
Yeah.
The Trump administration deported a Venezuelan professional soccer player, a youth soccer coach with no criminal record, to an El Salvadorian prison known for torture and abusive conditions, according to an affidavit filed with the court and confirmed by a family member's post on Facebook in Venezuela.
Was he at least here illegally?
The family, well, I think he was here seeking asylum. The family only discovered that their loved one had been renditioned to El Salvador when they saw him in a viral video posted by the Trump administration, in which it celebrated what it said was the mass deportation of violent members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. We were surprised to see him in the videos being released on social media of those deported to El Salvador, his uncle said on Facebook. We immediately contacted the lawyer because no more information about him was appearing on the ICE locator. He was due for a hearing on April 17th, 2025, so he had a hearing set for his immigration status. He had been applying for political asylum, a case he had a plausible chance to win, giving his back history. Reyes Barrios was not an economic migrant, but he had participated in 2 marches against the government of Nicolas Maduro. So he's against the Venezuelan government in the context of 2024's controversial presidential election. The United States has long pressured the Maduro government, which the United States does not officially recognize, to hold free and fair elections. The United States responded angrily when Venezuela's Supreme Court aligned with Maduro, kicked his leading opponent off the ballot, and multiple demonstrations throughout the country were held.
What is this, Romania?
According to his attorney, Reyes Barrios marched in 2 demonstrations, one in February and one in March in 2024, and was abducted off the street and taken to government security forces to an undisclosed location where he was tortured, facing electrocution and suffocation. So that happened to him in Venezuela. So that's why he came to the United States, and he was seeking asylum, and he had a case, and he had a court date on the 17th of April. He said that his nephew left Venezuela in March after his torture. On October 2023, the United States had offered temporary protective status to Venezuelans in the United States, arguing that government repression in the country meant it was unsafe to return. He spent several months working in Mexico waiting for his CBP-1 appointment. In September of the same year, exactly on the 1st, he had his appointment to enter the United States. At his appointment, Barrios said he was detained under investigation for suspicious tattoos they say are related to Tren de Aragua. What
are the tattoos?
Reyes Barrios' detention began under the Biden administration. The controversial Venezuelan gang uses a crown as part of its tattoos, and Reyes Barrios had a crown tattoo.
That's a little bit too loose, man, to just go by a crown, because I got a news for you. A lot of Latinos like that.
That like the crowns. According to his uncle, that tattoo was soccer-related.
You know, after Trump had that idiot, the real leader, Juan Guaido of Venezuela. And so, like, this guy left because he's protesting in line with what you want, idiot.
He's a soccer player, and most of his tattoos are related to his love for soccer and his family. For example, he has a crown on top of a soccer ball. This crown is associated with the Tren de Aragua criminal group. He found out about this when he was already detained in the United States. According to his uncle, an attorney in the United States contacted the family and asked for reams of documentation to support his case, which the family sent to the attorney, including an affidavit from the tattoo artist. Tobin, in the affidavit, said Venezuelan records made clear that Reyes Barrios had no criminal background and no gang ties and was indeed seeking genuine political asylum. Tobin obtained the affidavit from the tattoo artist attesting to the soccer-related nature of the tattoo and submitted multiple other examples of similar tattoos on non-gang members. The evidence, Tobin affirmed, was enough to move Reyes Barrios out of maximum security on March 10th or March 11th, yet he was deported just days later. According to Tobin, the U.S. also claimed he was a gangster based on a social media post in which he was making a hand gesture. That gesture is simply "I love you" in sign language and often means simply rock and roll. That the United States only referenced a single social media post of innocent hand gestures suggests they found nothing incriminating whatsoever. Reyes Barrios never got a chance to make his case, however, as he was deported to El Salvador ahead of his scheduled April 17th hearing. By then, he had spent 5.5 months in American detention. It is unclear whether Reyes Barrios is still alive. Department of Homeland Security spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin said the Trump administration is standing by the deportation. Quote, Hearst Reyes Barrios was not only in the United States illegally, but he has tattoos that are consistent with those indicating TDA gang membership. His own social media indicates he is a member of this vicious TDA gang. That all said, Department of Homeland Security intelligence assessments go beyond a single tattoo, and we are confident in our findings.
Can we know what they are, or we just have to trust you on this one?
So here's Karen Levitt. Here's what she says.
Andy McCarthy said in an interview with Hugh Hewitt, he certainly agrees with what the president is trying to do with the Alien Enemies Act, but he's not sure that the law is completely on his side. He cites some previous Supreme Court rulings dealing with enemy combatants in wartime, says that even they have a right to challenge their detention in court. He raised concern also that while TDA has been designated as a terrorist organization, these individuals hadn't been prosecuted for terrorism. So my my question is, will the president ask Congress potentially to declare war on these cartels for the invasion that he's talked about so that he's on stronger legal footing?
Well, we absolutely disagree with the legal opinion of the individual that you mentioned. We would not have moved forward with this if we didn't believe the president. This was within the president's executive authority to continue with this mass deportation effort under the authority provided to him under the Alien Enemies Act. And when you read the act, as I did last time at the podium, a predatory incursion is absolutely what has happened with Tren de Aragua. They have been sent here by the hostile Maduro regime in Venezuela, and the president, immediately upon taking office, designated TDA as a foreign terrorist organization. And under this act, it is within the president's authority to deport these terrorists. And anybody trying to defend these terrorists who have now been sent off of American soil should talk to the families of the individuals who these heinous monsters have killed and have.
So she's saying that they're all terrorists, even though it's obvious this guy wasn't. So that's
as soon as they start blathering, by the way, Patriot Act back in the day, we've already had people in a prison with no charges. It's already legal to do this, to take someone with no charges.
It's called indefinite detention.
Yeah, Obama already signed that in. So we already have that. I don't even know what the legal nonsense argument is. The point is, you're not even checking thoroughly. You're just taking whoever. And especially Maduro, Republicans and Trump have a hard-on for
They
the
hate Maduro.
regime.
And this guy was tortured by Maduro. So Caroline Leavitt fires shot at Fox News' Andy McCarthy over deportation case, trying to defend these as terrorists. Glenn Greenwald says this is just pro-war conservatives resurrecting their core tactic from the Bush-Cheney era. Anyone who objected to the civil liberties assaults of the war on terror, the Patriot Act, warrantless domestic eavesdropping, due process, free imprisonment, was called pro-terrorist. And
That's just what I just said. Yeah.
And here they are doing it again.
But you know what's funny is the people that are bringing these terrorists in, okay, and I'm not a fan of the gang. I don't care about, again, I don't care about them. I care about somebody that's not a member getting caught up. Why are you not going after all the people that let them in, these NGO people? Why is George Soros' shitty kid not in El Salvador?
Right.
Why is all these Democrats that you said are doing this? Why are they not in El Salvador? So they're only spreading it around to like the lowest levels. There's no justice. Remember, lock her up for Hillary?
Yeah.
She ain't going to go to El Salvador, is she?
Glenn Greenwald says this is a bipartisan tactic, too. Anyone who objects to U.S. financing and arming of Israel is also deemed pro-terrorist and pro-Hamas. That the Trump White House is using this label for longtime conservative darling Andrew McCarthy for questioning sending people to El Salvador for life in prison with zero evidence or due process shows how reflexive this smear is. So this guy, Andrew McCarthy, is a long time darling of the conservatives. And they're saying he's defending. So it just goes to show you how reflexive this smear is.
You know, I remember 9/11. I remember how reflexive the smear was.
Yeah.
I remember being like, wait, Guantanamo's still open? Like 20 years later.
Yep.
And being a little disturbed. Nobody brought that up any election, not since Obama didn't keep his promise.
You know, Chelsea Manning, they had Chelsea in indefinite detention.
Yeah, right.
So that means they can put you in prison without charging you. All they have to do is say you're a terrorist.
I guess we're not going back on that law, that rule.
Nope.
That's going to be good.
So we in spirit, when we played those videos, in spirit, we were like, yeah, let's get these gang members out of our country. Because we know there's gang members in our country.
MS-13 literally has MS-13 on their goddamn heads, so you could find him easy. You're taking a guy that has a crown?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a little vague, man. On a soccer ball. Is there a soccer division of TDA? Or send them back to their own goddamn country. How about that idea? Instead of to another country, they're not.
How about give him his court date? He had a court
How about
date.
just having any due process law if there's even a slight question?
Yeah.
Well, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. Anybody that says that, they better never complain about nothing. Because no omelet's coming, number one. And they're going to do it to you too, motherfucker. You're going to get broke like an egg. They'll do it to this guy, they'll do it to you.
Come see us on tour in Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, New York, Co-host, New York, Providence, Rhode Island, Los Angeles, Bakersfield, San Jose, Toledo, Ohio, and Toronto, Ontario. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.